Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, let's dive right in. We're looking at something pretty fascinating today. What happens when ancient principles of faith meet the fast-paced world of modern finance? Well, that very question is reshaping huge parts of the global economy, and it's all happening through a framework called Shariah compliance. So what is Shariah compliance really? I mean, to get a handle on its impact, we've got to start with the basics, right? The foundational principles? Okay, to put it simply, think of it as a rule book. It's a framework that makes sure all financial and business activities are, ethically and morally sound, all according to Islamic law. The big things here are fairness, ethics, and avoiding stuff like interest. And believe me, this isn't some tiny niche topic. It's actually a huge field of study. Researchers are digging into how it affects, well, pretty much everything, from how a company is run and how it manages risk, all the way to how it builds loyalty with its customers.
Okay, that's all well and good, but who's actually checking? Who decides if a company is really compliant? Well, that brings us to the guardians of the system.
Yeah, it's not like a company can just say, hey, we're compliant, and that's it. No way. It's a whole multi-layered system of oversight. There are specific groups and standards in place just to make sure the rules are actually being followed.
And this system has some serious checks and balances. So you've got these internal groups, right? They're called Shariah Supervisory Boards, or SSBs, and they're the experts inside the company guiding things. Then you've got the bigger, outside players, national and international bodies like a OAFI that set the standards. And finally, everything has to be out in the open, through audits and public reports. It's all about transparency.
So, okay, we've got the principles, and we've got the people who enforce them. But what does this all mean in the real world? How does this theory actually change how a business operates day to day?
Well, it really comes down to their financial DNA, and it's all about debt and cash. Shariah-compliant firms just have a totally different playbook. Research shows they'll always try to use the cash they have on hand first. They have super strict limits on how much they can borrow. And get this, when a crisis hits, they're way more likely to cut back on dividend payouts instead of just taking on more debt.
And a huge part of this comes down to one specific number, 33%. It's a really common rule. Basically, a company's conventional debt can't be more than a third of its total assets. That's a hard cap. And a rule like that, it forces a much more conservative, disciplined approach to money right from the get-go. It totally shapes how much risk a company is willing to take on.
Now, you might think that sounds like just a limitation, right? But what's really interesting is that the research shows this super conservative approach actually has a powerful upside, especially when the economy gets rocky.
Take the COVID-19 pandemic, for instance. That was a massive shock to the system, right? Well, multiple studies found that these compliant firms were way more resilient. That financial discipline really paid off. It made them stronger, more stable, and that's the kind of thing that builds some serious trust with customers.
So, that brings up a big question. We're talking about a framework that's centuries old. How on earth is it adapting to the 21st century? The answer, probably no surprise here, is technology.
Yep, AI is officially entering the world of Islamic finance. We're seeing it being used to build all kinds of new tools, everything from AI-powered robo-advisors for stock markets to really sophisticated new models for pricing assets, all designed to stay within the rules. But as you can imagine, this kicks off a huge debate. On the one hand, the promise is amazing, right? AI can be super efficient, and it can make these compliant products available to way more people. But then there's the peril. The research is pretty clear. AI just doesn't have that human touch, that nuanced judgment you need for complex ethical or religious rulings. It can't do what a human scholar, a mufti, does. So where do we land? Well, the big takeaway from researchers is this. AI can be an incredibly powerful tool, for sure, but it can't and shouldn't replace the human element. The general agreement is that you absolutely need a strong system of human oversight to make sure it's being used correctly.
Okay, let's get to our final section, and this one really gets to the core tension, the central debate at the heart of all of this.
Just take a look at this quote from the research. It hits the nail on the head. There's this growing worry that some financial products might just be, well, conventional finance with a shiny new label.
It really boils down to this. Are they just following the letter of the law, but maybe missing the spirit of it? I mean, is it enough to just check all the boxes on a form? Or is the real goal here to build a financial system that's fundamentally different and maybe more ethical?
And that right there is the big challenge facing the entire industry today.
This whole question of authenticity, form versus substance, that's what's going to define the future of Sharia-compliant finance. It's going to determine what its real role in the global economy will be. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.